Army plays Navy in a football game. Who wins?
Army always wins. And I always make sure, and I did it this last year, you turn it off before the game is over. Maybe there's 1 second left. Because that way people say, who won the Army-Navy game? You say, I don't know, I shut it off. Although how they lost last year, I can't get over that. My goodness gracious. I'm Paul Capofari. Capofari is an Italian word. It means head of iron. My father says we ran an iron foundry in Italy. My mother says it's just a long line of very stubborn people. There's actually could be a third answer. I was in an athletic event in the Army, and it ended up in fisticuffs, and the other guy took a swing, and I ducked. He hit me right here in the head and broke his hand to smithereens. So it could be people with just very hard heads. I grew up in Port Richmond, went to Port Richmond High School like my father did, and my wife, that's where I met her, went to West Point and then served 21 years in the Army after I graduated from West Point. I didn't get a chance to be in any conflicts, thankfully. The Vietnam War was ending as I got my commission and started my Army training. Just before I retired in 1992 was the first Gulf War, where we liberated Kuwait, and I was teaching at West Point then. So my overseas service was in Hawaii, but as I like to say, the communists didn't take over Hawaii while I was there. I gave a speech to the junior ROTC at Port Richmond High School, and they asked me to come, the colonel that was there, and he said to me, you know, we're going in the summer training to Fort Dix. Can you imagine? That'll be twice as far as these kids have ever been away from home. So I thought about that, and then when I went that night, or the couple of nights later, to make the speech, I said, you know, when I went to Fort Dix, that was the farthest I had ever been away from home for the physical. When I went to West Point, that was twice as far as I'd ever been away from home. I have something in common with you all. You know, trying to connect to the ROTC cadets at Port Richmond High School, you know, told them, get off the island, get off your island, challenge yourself. And I'll be honest, and it is a cliche, but when I went to West Point, I was in awe, like, holy crap. There were congressmen's sons and senators' sons and generals' sons, and I'm like, what am I doing here? And I'd say about 6 months later, I went to class and looked around and thought, what are these guys doing here? I read every assignment twice. I worked every math problem twice. When they tell you to jump, don't ask why. I didn't ask anything. I just made sure I jumped higher than everybody else. One of the things I'm really very proud of is a Port Richmond High School student, when I was working with the junior ROTC, went to West Point. Matt Pride just retired from the Army as an engineer. That was really very fulfilling to see another Port Richmond High School kid go to West Point. What drew me to the military was the chance to go to West Point. It's a free college. You actually get paid while you're there. I was enrolled in Brooklyn College, and I was willing to go there and had a scholarship there and would have ended up being a high school math teacher. But the opportunity to go to West Point, one of my mother's cousins went to West Point. He was in the class of 1944. My mother had visited him when he was a cadet, so it wasn't like totally foreign to me. When I graduated from West Point, I was a lieutenant and did the kind of things, a platoon leader, those kind of jobs. And then I got the chance when I became a captain to be a infantry company commander. And that was phenomenally fulfilling. It was really something. You're 150 men, you're the captain, you have like 4 or 5 lieutenants and sergeants. It's a funny thing within the military. The commander is called the old man. And I came walking through the office once, and the first sergeant, who had to be in his 40s, was telling the other sergeants, the old man says we have to do this. And I got in my office and I realized, holy mackerel, he was talking about me. Once you've been a company commander, then the Army looks to give you a secondary specialty. And there was talk of me going to Purdue to study physics and then teach at West Point. And then the lawyer thing was a part of that. And that was much more appealing to me than to go into grad school and then teaching at West Point. So that was really how I gravitated to law school. The fact that the Army was going to pay for it, they pay the tuition, they give you a place to live, that's your job for 3 years. That was a really good thing that I got out of the Army. So I became an Army lawyer, prosecuted cases and defended cases. Then I got a chance to teach at the Army has a little law school in the University of Virginia. So I taught there and then was assigned to the Pentagon. That was really something because I did a couple of big things in the Pentagon. I testified before the President's Commission on the HIV epidemic about what the Army was doing about AIDS. And that was on C-SPAN. So my mother got to see it. My mother got to see me on TV. I got to work in the White House counsel's office. This was in 1988. President Reagan was finishing his second term. People leave the government when the president's going to change. And so to fill the offices, they asked the military to send people. So I got to work in the White House counsel's office, which is not in the White House. You work in the old executive office building. That was during the Iran-Contra thing with Poindexter and McFarlane, all Naval Academy graduates, I will point out. I worked on the prosecutions from the president's standpoint. That was very heady. You get to see the government at work. I got assigned from there to West Point, and I got to teach at West Point, which was a great assignment. West Point, being a college, invites people in to speak. And we sent a letter to Justice Scalia asking him if he wanted to come up and speak. And he could bring his wife, and we would put them up in a hotel. And he actually called right away and said, well, I don't want to bring my wife, I want to bring my son. He's a junior in high school, he's thinking of coming to West Point. So Justice Scalia came up with Matt. Matt Scalia eventually graduated from West Point, but I got to know Justice Scalia very well. And I actually taught an advanced course, and with maybe 20 cadets, we would go down to Washington and meet with a Supreme Court justice. And I would just call Justice Scalia, and he would set it up, and we got to meet Justice O'Connor, we got to meet Justice Souter. It was really something to get to know the Supreme Court judges. I would have stayed at West Point and continued teaching, but once again, it's time for you to, and now I had 21 years, so I can retire. And the first thing I thought of was, let me look into my hometown. Called, and the next day I had an appointment with Bill Murphy and talked to him for about an hour and 15 minutes, and then he said, when can you start? So that started me in my career as an assistant district attorney. When Mike McMahon became the district attorney, I had retired a second time, but Mike asked me to come back to the office. And I had 4 years as the chief assistant, which was phenomenally fulfilling. When I was an assistant district attorney under Dan Donovan, we started the mental health court. And that was a real step. Tim Kohler, Dan Donovan, and I went over to watch the mental health court in Brooklyn. And wow, they were handling a lot of cases. We got in a car to drive back. I said to Dan Donovan, "What'd you think?" And he said, "They're making a big chance with public safety." So I thought, well, that's the end of that. 2 days later, Dan came into my office and said, "This mental health court is the right thing to do. Be careful, but go do it." And then, of course, with Tim Kohler's help, we pushed it through and got the mental health court started. And I'm very proud of my part in the mental health court. And then when I came back to the office, Mike McMahon said we should have the same kind of court for veterans. And we put that into motion. And it was a little harder getting started. We actually found people didn't want to admit that they were veterans. And yet, one of the main focuses was we can get so much more treatment options and help when we can get into the Veterans Administration. Joe Skinner's still there. He was with us right from the start. It was so fulfilling to come back to the DA's office with Mike. We always had a very good office, and I think with Mike getting the resources, I thought the office really took off, and it's even better now.
What is your most famous catchphrase at RCDA?
Oh, definitely. Get back to work. It's actually very true, and it's a part of the prosecution function. Crime don't take no vacation. You win a very tough case, and the jury comes back, and the trouble is, there's another case starting tomorrow, and we have to win that case too. And we have to apply the best judgment to the cases in front of the grand jury. You really can't sit on your laurels. The victim of this crime doesn't really care that the last 20 victim cases have all ended up with guilties. They want their case to be a guilty, and we owe it to them. I'm very proud of the DA's office, and very, very proud of what we focused on and what we did. And I think I got that from the Army. You don't take shortcuts. You do the right thing for the right reason, and you enforce that on your subordinates. Leadership is rewarding people and encouraging them, especially when they do good, but also having high standards. I always thought, but I guess I learned that I am a leader. I can influence people, that I can get people to do the right thing, that I have high standards, and I can get the others to stick to that, and can do it in a way without being a martinet, without yelling, but simply by knowing what's the right thing to do and sticking to those standards. When I was a second lieutenant, I was chosen to be on the brigade staff, and I shared an office with a captain who then became a major, and that was Hugh Shelton. He was the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff on 9/11. That's how he went through the ranks and was the highest ranking military officer on 9/11. So I stayed in close touch with him. He was a terrific leader, really nice person. One of the best things I ever did, my nephew joined the Army, and he went through airborne school and was assigned to the 82nd Division, and it was his birthday. And General Shelton was the commanding general of Fort Bragg then. And I called him up, and I told him about my nephew, and he actually went down to my nephew's unit and made him do push-ups. The unit loved that. Here comes the commanding general, barking out, "Hey, Lynch, get down and give me 20. It's your birthday." Everybody's like, how did he know that? This is John Lynch, who is the son of Elizabeth, who worked here in this office for many, many years.
Right.
I wanted to emphasize the support I've gotten from my family. Sharon and I got married 2 days after I graduated from West Point. We lived in all these different places, 13 different houses that she hung up the pictures, hung up the curtains, made it into a home, and then we would move. I remember one occasion, Peter's soccer team had just won a big tournament, and they were all celebrating, and the coach was, "And we're going to get together next year, and we're going to play, and are you going to play, Billy, and are you going to play, Bobby?" And then he asked Peter, "Are you going to be on the team next year?" And Peter said, "We move a lot." I was sent once to a 6-month school, and we pulled them out of school, and they went to Norfolk, and they went to a school there for 6 months. Then we went to Bowie, Maryland. So it's a lot of travel, a lot of changes. The families have to be flexible, and I've been very lucky that the family stayed behind me and I was able to serve. Behind every soldier is a family giving them support, and that's something that I wish civilians, realized more. Knowing the sacrifices that your family has to make is a big, big part of being in the service. This is, this is when I when I retired. So that's us at my retirement ceremony. Michelle was a sophomore in high school, and Peter was in the 8th grade. And this is in front of our house, our quarters in West Point, where we lived. My youngest son, David, went into the Army, into the airborne. If you talk about like 2 thrills in that, I got to swear him in. So when he went to Fort Hamilton and they're going to put him on the bus, first thing they do is swear him in, and I got to do the swearing in. And then when he graduated from Advanced Infantry AIT, Advanced Infantry Training, and they're lined up in the middle of then the parents can go out to greet them. And as I walked up, he saluted me. That was a big deal. When my nephew went, and he chose infantry because I had been in the infantry. So that's gratifying, and I got to pin his infantry insignia on him. The summer training for the new cadets culminates in a 14-mile road march. Actually, the first year that they were going to do it, my nephew was a plebe, one of the freshmen. I really trained very hard to walk with him. And then for about 16 or 17 years, walked with a new cadet from Staten Island. Matt Pride, I walked with Matt. Walked with my son David. That was a thrill. Now, you're wearing T-shirts and shorts walking along. They're wearing the 50-pound packs, carrying a rifle, the steel helmet. You're walking with the cadets, and they ask you questions. What was it like when you were here? Which is really, really very nice. In 1968, when I went in, there was a draft. When I went to West Point, a lot of draftees, a lot of people, taken off the street and sent to Vietnam. By the time the Vietnam War was over and I was in training, it was a complete volunteer force. I think when I got to Hawaii, I had one guy in my platoon who was a draftee. And he got out like as soon as I got there. Everybody else was a volunteer. That was a big transition for the Army. Whether this is a true story or not, that the Army captain going through the airport and a woman stops him because he has the medals on. Why did you go to Vietnam? And his thing was, "You sent me, lady." And I think that was my attitude. If my country tells me to serve, that's what I'm going to do. These people were elected, and this is important. Now, looking back in history, and you wonder about the whole thing, but we're a democracy, and the Congress voted it, and this is the way we did things. I think a volunteer military is much, much better. And there's a lot in it for the soldiers, too. They say you learn different things. What you do is you learn about yourself, what you can do, what you can accomplish. So I'm very glad my son went in. I'm very glad my nephew, and actually my nephew lost his leg in Iraq. That's a tough thing. You feel like this person followed in your footsteps. But I feel like what we were doing over there was right, and he was right to do what he was doing, and this is the price we have to pay. My family, my extended family here on Staten Island was very patriotic. My uncles had all served in World War II. Veterans are very, very well supported on Staten Island. Out at the West Shore Little League, they have the names of every Staten Islander from every war. That's a really class monument. The Vietnam Veterans Corner there, where every name of every Staten Islander is on the wall, and how they salute the veterans. When they do the calling of the names, there's a soldier there, he was a medic, who died. And they say, he's 19 years old, he died on this day, and that was my 19th birthday. So I've learned all I could about him. The Battle of the Bulge Memorial, if a Staten Islander ever really wants to see a great monument built by the World War II veterans who fought in the Battle of the Bulge, it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. You don't get those kind of connections unless the veterans make it available to you, and unless the community supports it. My main takeaway from my military service is people come up to you and say, thank you for your service. And that's really nice. But I thank you for my service. I got a phenomenal education. I got to serve with American soldiers who are terrific people. I got to work for the DA's office. The people who work at the DA's office are very committed to justice. Got to work with the New York City Police Department. So I thank you for my service. It's been an honor and a privilege. The chance to be a part of something bigger than yourself and to do something to move it forward. And I had that chance in the Army, and I had that chance here with the DA's office. It's remarkable. I appreciate so much the chance to do this. And if I have something to say to the office, you're doing a great job. Get back to work.